Hi everyone. I'm going to start by asking a rhetorical question. What do animals such as the polar bear, gorillas, snow leopards, blue whales, and Asian elephants all have in common? Yes, they may all be mammals, but they are all on the endangered species list. They all live in varying climates, but they could all suffer the same fate. This leads into what I want to talk about today. The number of animals on the verge of extinction continues to grow. Some of these extinctions are caused by environmental damage. Animals like the polar bears have been greatly affected by the melting of the ice caps. The melting ice caps in the Arctic are causing polar bears to go extinct from a lack of available food resources. The polar bear is one of the most well-known mammals in the world. Its distinct white fur sets it apart from other species of bears. Their fur is very dense and well insulated. A male's body can overheat by running from the thick layer of fur surrounding the bear's skin. However, since they need to swim across bodies of water to find seals to prey on, they must have large paws and a thick layer of fat to keep them warm. Their insulated fur is useless when wet. Therefore, they rely upon that layer of fat to keep them warm in the most frigid of temperatures. They use their large paws to act like a paddle as they swim across the vast ocean. The adult male polar bear usually weighs around 1,000 pounds, whereas the female weighs around 600 pounds. Climate change is a term we've all heard about frequently. It is impacting different climates all throughout the world. This directly affects the lives of many wildlife. In the Arctic, the ice caps are melting at an alarming rate. According to ScienceScope, which is an academic journal, what happens is sea ice reflects 90% of the energy of solar radiation and warms the lower atmosphere. This generates more thawing, which gives way to more warming. As temperatures rise, the permafrost thaws and releases this trapped organic carbon within it. This will oxidize and allow more carbon dioxide to be released into the air in a cascading cycle of global warming. As global temperatures continue to rise, more and more carbon dioxide will get released into the air. It is a vicious cycle. Now, this does not just affect the ice caps. As sea levels rise, wildlife and ecosystems could be destroyed by climate change. As ice melts in areas with a higher latitude, this causes ocean water to expand and heat throughout the world. Now I'm going to connect the drastic climate change and its effect on polar bears. Polar bears have a very high caloric diet. The primary source of food for polar bears are seals. They are heavily dependent on seals to eat because they provide enough nutrients and fat to sustain themselves. Thus, polar bears must migrate to where the seals are located. This requires lots of travel, which expends a lot of energy. Scientists tag polar bears and follow their location over a 10-day period to see how much they moved and the amount of calories they expended. The 3-year study conducted by the U.S. Geological Survey and the University of California, Santa Cruz found that the Arctic predators are moving 1.6 times more than the previous studies have reported. Their study proved that polar bears are moving much more than in previous years. This is related to climate change because as ice melts, polar bears need to swim further to catch their prey. At one point, polar bears could walk across the thousands of miles of ice, but that is no longer the case. They could dig into the ice and pursue seals for the short amount of time they can hold their breath underwater. However, if they need to swim to catch seals, then they will continue to die from malnourishment. The study went further and said, for one polar bear to sustain its energy level, it would require an intake of 12,325 calories a day, which is equivalent to eating one adult ring seal for every 10 days. Over the course of the study, 4 of the 9 bears did not reach that calorie level and lost a combined mass of 22 kilograms, which is equivalent to 44 pounds. This reinforced the famine lifestyle the polar bears have. Polar bears are not meeting their caloric needs, which means their cubs are also not meeting their caloric needs. This becomes a vicious cycle as polar bears are continually looking for food to try to sustain themselves. Now that the problem has been addressed, I want to share some possible solutions to help save the Arctic ice caps. As I said earlier, not just polar bears are impacted by climate change. The whole Arctic food chain is dependent on ice. This is because algae and other tiny organisms live within the ice. Arctic cod, which also live in the ice cap, feed on the tiny organisms. Seals feed on the Arctic cod, and then polar bears feed on the seals. As Kevin Fitzgerald, a marine biologist, said, current global studies estimate there are around 20,000 animals in some 19 discrete circumpolar populations. Thousands of organisms rely upon the ice to survive. So what kind of precautions need to be taken to save the ice caps? In the Melbourne Journal of International Law, it says, 3 areas where action can and should be taken by polar states: mitigating and minimizing local greenhouse gas emissions, developing appropriate regional adaptation strategies, and representing the interests of these regions within appropriate international fora. If more countries pull their resources together to try to halt climate change, many ecosystems and organisms can survive this disastrous period. The polar bear is one of the most famous mammals on the planet. With their white fur, large bodies, and top predator reputation, they are a notorious animal. However, their ecosystem is being negatively impacted by climate change. Polar bears need to travel great distances to find their prey. Thus, they need to expend more energy to find the seals because the seals can thrive in water as opposed to a polar bear who is more restricted. The melting ice caps don't just impact the polar bears, but the food chain as a whole. There need to be steps taken to help preserve the Arctic climate. Thank you.